into a crowd of innocent people who are essentially trapped in. Like we just talked to one of the witnesses who said it was hard to get out of there because, you know, they box it in so people can't sneak into the concert. But the problem is that when something like this happens, everybody needs to get out. You're kind of trapped inside. So just horrific to see something like this happen. And a shooter that was well armed, that had a number of rounds that, you know, they said there would be a pause in the shooting and then it would start up again. He's probably changing his clips out.
Yeah, and that last witness that Lauren Blanchard talked to was actually, could visibly see the window where all the shooting was coming from out of the Mandalay Bay there on the 32nd floor, and he described, you know, tattered curtains flying out of the window itself, the broken glass, and smoke coming from the room following all of these shots that were fired. From what I understand, Randy, for about 20 or 30 minutes this went on.
That's correct, and you know, think how difficult it is to isolate that room, you know, when you're looking at it and then being able to respond to it and identify exactly which room that shooting is coming from. It's a very difficult task. Law enforcement, the Metro Police did a hell of a job tonight. Yeah. You know, the only good news in this whole rotten, horrible scenario is that this shooter's dead and died at the hands of law enforcement. Yeah. That's the only good news in this horrendous, in this tragic situation.
It makes you sick. It makes you really mad. It makes you really sick. And I think everybody feels generally the same way every time one of these happens. And sadly, they're happening more and more. Randy, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we do
You're
now
very
want to
welcome.
Thank you. And we want to go now to Dr. Kanta Ahmed, who comes on oftentimes when we have these scenes of mass shootings, and it just seems that we're seeing you more and more often, Doctor. And it just speak to yet again another one of these scenarios where innocent people are just slaughtered by a complete coward, and what the mentality is here. Obviously, we don't know a motive at this point, but they all have some similar mentality of just severe anger.
I mean, I'm desolate for Las Vegas, desolate for our country. Whatever the motive, this is domestic terrorism. But from my perspective, I'm very, very frightened that this has echoes of the Ariel Grande concert massacre in Manchester and also the Bataclan in Paris. If you think about Las Vegas as a radical Islamist might, it represents everything about America that Islamists loathe: freedom, music, mixing of genders, pleasure. It is an iconic location. We know from ISIS recently announcing, telling Muslims to take cover, we are coming for you. The hours ago, your producers asked me to come in this morning because we were going to talk about the terrorism in Edmonton and Marseille. And on the way, this story unfolded. So I'm very frightened. In this state of our nation, I don't know what to hope for. What should we hope for the identity of the killer? Absolutely flabbergasting. As a critical care physician, which I once was, I practiced for over 10 years in that capacity. I can only imagine the scene in our hospitals. The first responders, the doctors, understand that these automatic weapons, within seconds, when there was a shooting at the Orlando airport, in 80 seconds, 6 people were dead. The hundreds that have been taken to hospital, many of them may not, God forbid, come out with their lives. This is a terrible day for our country.
We do want to make sure that we say, as we were listening to the news conference from the sheriff a short time ago, that although we do know that this was a local resident of Las Vegas, he did make sure to say that we do not know his belief system, that being the suspect who is deceased. Exactly right. Though do believe that he was a lone wolf.
We don't know if this was. This could have been. This could have been This could have been somebody with a mental disability, just a crazy person. It could have been. I mean, we don't know if it was.
Do not know the motive.
It wasn't ISIS inspired. We don't know anything about that.
I would agree with you, but it is interesting that I've been here almost an hour and a half listening to commentary. This possibility has to be in the minds of the investigators. We also know ISIS-inspired attacks have been perpetrated by individuals of many ethnicities, and so I'm very concerned that there was a female companion that is being searched for, and unfortunately there is a reality for many years that we do have domestic radicalization here in the United States. This is a fearful day for all Americans, whether or not we are Muslim.
And we do know that there were 2 vehicles as well, just to let people know once again that at some point those vehicles, right there you see the license plates of those, the one described as a Hyundai Tucson, the other a Chrysler Pacific Touring, were at the scene of the Mandalay Bay. They they are somehow related to the suspect who is deceased. Those vehicles now being searched for apparently no longer on the scene.
Okay, and Doctor, I mean, again, we do want to re-emphasize, we happen to have you here today, I believe, for another story. You are a Muslim scholar, but there is no indication at this point that this was inspired by any radicalized Muslim agenda or anything like that. This could be, there are a number of agendas right now where people are opening fire into crowds. There's a number of angry people, and this is kind of the venue that they've taken to for any possible motive at this point, and we're seeing it more and more. What is it, Doctor, that you see that turns them on so much to the thought of just killing innocent people? Because I cannot fathom how that would satisfy anybody to just attack innocent people. I mean, when you're angry, you usually have something to be angry at. I mean, how could it just be random people in a crowd?
I think one has to think about individuals actually calculating, premeditating, preparing. All of those are rational choices. Whether there is a psychotic break that precipitates it, who can say? Going back to terrorism, and I agree, I think it's very responsible of Fox and Friends First, you and Heather, to say we don't have knowledge that this is radical Islam, but Islamists, just like contemporary terrorists in the 20th century, are no more mentally ill than the average population. The prevalence of mental illness when perpetrators perform these acts is the same as the normal population. So we don't know if it's mental illness. We don't know if it's what you and I experience as anger. We don't know what the strategy is. And I thought the police officer giving the press conference, or the officer giving the press conference, was very explicit in saying he did not know the belief system. Yeah. I do feel very fearful that withholding the identity means that they are looking at a network of individuals that will be known to them. And I would not exclude radical Islam as a motive, but I will say again, at the moment we don't know.
Yeah, and we don't know anything. It could have been a number of different motives.
But regardless, as you mentioned, this is definitely a case of domestic terrorism, no matter how you look at it. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight on this just horrific morning as people continue to wake up at this hour. And just to bring them up to speed, once again, this shooting at a country music festival, a 3-day festival that was going on in Las Vegas. Parents there with their children, about, 20 to 30,000 people there on the scene. At least 20 people dead at this point, over 100 others injured. This mass shooting happened from the floor of the Mandalay Bay, the 32nd floor, out of a window there. The suspect believed to have been taken down, dead at this hour. One suspect involved, but looking for at least one other person believed to be his roommate.
Yeah, looking possibly for a roommate who we don't know. I mean, who likely had nothing to do with this, could have had something to do with this. We know nothing about her other than she was a roommate, and they cannot find her at this point. Of course, it is the middle of the night, 2:25 in the morning in Las Vegas, so it's not the easiest time to find somebody. But again, this happening logistically, if you're looking at Las Vegas, you've got the Strip, which runs north and south, holds all those hotels and casinos. Almost everybody's been to Las Vegas at some point, or at least seen it in a movie. This happened right on the south end of the Strip, right between the airport and the Mandalay Bay Hotel, which is a major hotel and casino. There's a little bit of space there just to the east of the Strip of Las Vegas Boulevard, where this concert venue holds, and it just sits there empty most of the time, but from time to time they do have a music event like this. This was a 3-day country music concert, and again, thousands of people packed into here, and the person that did this obviously knew the logistics of it, because they knew what side of the Mandalay Bay they needed to stay on to have that view of the concert venue. They're shooting across a very wide street from, probably hundreds of yards away, but they had a high-powered weapon, powerful enough to do some serious damage here from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay, and people, again, just trapped. Yeah. They were sitting ducks, as one of the officers we spoke to earlier talked about. We did have a news conference about 20-30 minutes ago that updated us on exactly what has happened. This is Sheriff Joseph Lombardo talking just about 30 minutes ago, explaining how they took the shooter down and who else they're looking for at this point, that roommate.
We determined there was a shooter on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Officers responded to that location and engaged the suspect at that location. He is dead currently. He has been identified. He is a local resident. I will not release his name at this time, but we are interested in a companion that is traveling with him. And her name is, and I will provide you the name, so please be accurate on this, is Mary Lou Danley, M-A-R-I-L-O-U. last name spelled D-A-N-L-E-Y. She is a Asian female, approximately 4'11", weight of 111 pounds. We have not located her at this time, and we are interested in talking to her for follow-up. 2 vehicles we're interested in locating, and we need your assistance with that. We have a Hyundai Tucson with Nevada plate 114 Baker 40B40, and a Chrysler Pacifica Touring Nevada plate 19D401. These are the plates registered to the suspect that we located at the Mandalay Bay.
It's just a horrible situation. The Route 91 Harvest Country Music Festival